Let me set the scene for you, just so you understand the kind of day this was. It's 6 in the morning, sun just barely peeking over the treetops, dew still clinging to the grass, and I'm standing there in my oldest work boots. The air smells like pine needles, diesel fumes, and that sort of wet cold that settles into your bones. I've got my hands shoved deep in my jacket pockets, just watching as Cordelia Whitmore, yeah, that's her real name, clicks a shiny new padlock shut on the gate my granddad built 70 years ago. She's humming. And I'm just thinking, who the hell hums while stealing a piece of someone else's history? The chain rattles as it drops against the old wooden post, and I swear it sounds like a funeral bell. Cordelia turns toward me, all smiles. Her lipstick probably cost more than my truck, and says, "Nothing personal, Mr. Blackwood." I look at her, and there's this thought rolling around in my head, something my dad used to say, "Wrong move, lady. Dead wrong." Because here's what folks like Cordelia never get. Sometimes the quiet guy with dirt under his fingernails is sitting on a secret that's been aging for 3 generations, and you'd never know until it's too late. If you're sitting there wondering what you'd do if some entitled HOA queen tried to padlock your family's legacy, well, let me just say, there's probably a Cordelia lurking in every nice neighborhood, maybe even yours. Let me back up, though, because stories like this never start with a fancy chain or a smug smile. They start with stubborn old men, handshake deals, and a kind of long-game thinking that would make Cordelia's lawyers lose sleep. My name's Ezra Blackwood. I'm 3rd-generation owner and caretaker of Pine Ridge Family Campground, up in the mountains of North Carolina. My grandfather, everyone called him Big Ezra, bought 847 acres of this land in 1952, paid $12,000 for it, which, back then, was more money than anyone in the family had ever seen. This was the kind of place where a new Chevy cost $1,500, just to put it in perspective. And the old man had this saying, "Son, when you buy land, you buy everything under it, over it, and around it." Never made sense to me when I was a kid, but turns out those words saved my skin more than once. And this place, it's not just dirt and trees. We've got a stretch of lake, so clear you can count the fish down 20 feet. There's forest here so old that even grown men get quiet walking through it, like they're in church. And most people don't realize it, but there are mineral rights running out 2 miles in every direction. My grandfather was nothing if not thorough. Dad ran the campground for 40 years like it was his personal mission to prove heaven could exist on earth. Every summer, the same families came back. Kids caught their first fish here. Grown-ups rediscovered what their own voices sounded like when they weren't buried under traffic and work stress. When Dad had his stroke in 2019, I didn't just get handed a deed. I inherited the sound of laughter echoing off the lake and the responsibility to keep that magic alive. Now it's just me and my daughter Maya. She's 17, got her mom's brains and her grandpa's stubbornness. This land is her living classroom. It's where I proposed to Sarah under the old oak by the dock 15 years ago. Sarah, she fought cancer with more courage than I ever managed in Desert Storm. And when we lost her 3 years back, I buried her next to my great-granddad, right behind the cabins he built with his own hands. But let's not romanticize it. Keeping 847 acres running? It's brutal. Property taxes alone are $18,000 a year. Maintenance, insurance, septic pumps that only break at 2 in the morning on holiday weekends. You need every last camping fee just to break even. And that's before you factor in people like Cordelia Whitmore, pharmaceutical heiress, and, as far as I'm concerned, professional pain in the ass. She showed up in 2018, right as Lakeside Estates, this gleaming new development, started sprouting up along our North Shore. 40 McMansions, price tags from $800,000 to $2 million, with a private beach club and enough HOA rules to strangle a grown man. Cordelia made her money off opioid settlements, which ought to tell you everything you need to know about her compass. Spring of 2023, she decides to grace my humble campground with her presence. Imagine me pouring coffee And there she is, perched on an old picnic table, like a praying mantis in Prada. Her perfume is so strong it feels like vanilla's trying to kill every pine tree in a 100-foot radius. She taps her nails against my mug and starts explaining my situation, with the patience of a teacher talking to toddler. Apparently, our Friday night campfires are causing atmospheric disturbances for her residents. Kids who've been coming here since before she was born are suddenly a threat to her curated lifestyle experience. She actually said that, like I was supposed to be grateful for the chance to ruin my life quietly. Mr. Blackwood, she says, I believe it would benefit everyone if you transitioned away from commercial operations by Labor Day. This type of establishment simply doesn't align with our community standards. I try to be diplomatic, suggest we could tweak quiet hours, work together on lake conservation, be neighborly. She just smiles and says, how charming. We'll see about that, Mr. Blackwood. As she leaves, the gravel crunches under her BMW like broken bones. And that smile, that's not a neighborly smile. That's a cat about to kill a mouse smile. I should have seen it coming. Cordelia wasn't planning to be a pain. She was planning to own everything I loved. And she'd already started the paperwork. By October, she's ready to show me what we'll see about that means when you've got pharmaceutical money and no conscience. First, the noise complaints. Apparently our campfires are breaking county ordinances that don't exist. Next, an anonymous tip to the health department about our septic. Then the fire marshal gets concerns about our electrical hookups. Every single one costs me money, $200 here, $500 there, for inspections and attorney calls just to prove we're legal. But Cordelia isn't just harassing me. She's building a story. She starts spreading rumors at the country club about how we attract transients and criminal elements. Makes it sound like I'm running a hobo convention, not a family campground. And you know what? She's methodical. I'll give her that. But she made one huge mistake. She underestimated me. And more importantly, she underestimated Maya. Maya starts digging for a school project on local business leaders. Finds out Cordelia's money comes from opioid settlements. Meanwhile, Lakeside Estates cut every corner building that development. No proper septic permits. Stormwater runoff pouring straight into the lake. They even cleared wetlands without permission. Everything Cordelia accused us of, she was doing double. So I start filing my own complaints. Health Department, EPA, zoning, armed with photos, water samples, you name it. The county inspector, a decent guy named Rodriguez, pulls me aside after finding illegal runoff from her side. He says, Mr. Blackwood, you should know Mrs. Whitmore donated $50,000 to Commissioner Hayes' re-election campaign last year. Hayes, the guy who fast-tracked Lakeside Estates' permits, now scrutinizing my family's place under a microscope. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just fighting Cordelia. I was fighting a whole dam system. Maya finds me on the porch that night, chain-smoking Marlboros and staring at the lake. She sits in Sarah's old rocker and says, Mom always said, when people fight dirty, you don't have to get dirty back. You just have to get smarter. Smart, right? Time to see how smart Cordelia really is. 2 weeks later, she shows up with a so-called survey crew. 3 guys in hard hats, measuring along our access road. I watch them marking trees and driving stakes, and I ask for their permits. The crew chief says, Lady told us this was her property. Interesting. I pull out my phone and record the whole exchange. 10 minutes later, Cordelia's BMW comes barreling down the gravel. She steps out with a look that says run. Just doing some preliminary measurements for a small fence project, she says. On my property? Well, there's some confusion about property lines. No confusion here, I tell her. 70 years of surveys say this road's right where it's always been. Her smile slips. Perhaps we should let our attorneys sort this out. Perhaps we should, I say, still recording as her crew disappears in a hurry. But before she leaves, she calls out, Enjoy your little camp while it lasts, Mr. Blackwood. Winter's coming. That night, I called Franklin Morse, old-timer lawyer who handled Dad's estate. Told him it was time to see what 70 years of paperwork could dig up. January rolls in. Snow silence, and Cordelia's next brilliant scheme. She's realized that if she can't drown me in paperwork or fees, maybe she can just steal the lake. Legal papers hit my mailbox on a Tuesday, so cold you could snap the air in half. Her HOA, with all their fancy lawyers, is claiming exclusive water rights to Pine Lake. They want an injunction. They want my campers off their lake. They even hired private security to patrol the shore like I'm running some kind of criminal operation. Local newspaper just prints their press release word for word. Lakeside Estates HOA acts to protect pristine watershed from commercial contamination. Makes it sound like I'm dumping toxic waste instead of teaching kids to bait a hook. But here's the thing about small towns. Some lawyers have been practicing since before Nixon resigned. Franklin Morse is one of those. When I showed him Cordelia's water rights claim, he laughs, reaches for this ancient magnifying glass, and says, "Son, let me show you something your granddad was smart enough to put in that 1952 deed." The language is clear as day. We own all water rights. Riparian access. Beneficial use. Not some. Not shared. All of it. Cordelia's lawyers missed what any first year would have caught. You can't claim exclusive rights to water somebody else already owns. Here's a little life lesson for you. In water law, original deeds beat fancy lawyers every time. Franklin gets busy on the legal response, and I start documenting what Cordelia's pristine development is really doing to the lake. Maya and her environmental science club, my secret weapon, turn into my research team. They take water samples, document erosion, map out the damage. What we find would give the EPA a heart attack. Their storm drains are dumping runoff straight into the lake. The private beach club's septic is leaking. And all those security guards patrolling the shoreline? Just bored retirees, except one ex-Marine named Rodriguez. One day, Rodriguez pulls me aside and says, "That lady told us to accidentally damage any campground property near the waterline. Make problems for your guests." I hand him my number. "You ever want real work, call me." Next thing I know, Rodriguez is sending me photos of Cordelia's secret meetings with county officials. Apparently, she's trying to invoke eminent domain for public waterfront access. Taxpayer money to steal private property for her friends. Maya's water data shows our end of the lake is cleaner than any spot near Lakeside Estates. 70 years of us taking care of it versus 5 years of rich people playing God with bulldozers. Guess which one holds up better? Cordelia isn't done. She holds a concerned citizens meeting at the community center. There's a PowerPoint. There's 50 hostile faces. Property values have dropped 12% since this campground expanded, she says, clicking through cherry-pick stats. I stand up in the back. Funny thing, property values actually rose 30% after Travel Plus Leisure featured us in Hidden Gems of the South last year. Her pointer hand shakes. We're trying to protect our investment, our children's safety. The only thing unsafe is your math, Mrs. Whitmore, and your septic system. Silence. You could hear a phone vibrate. Cordelia had bet on me being some bumpkin, but I had Maya, a high school science club, and 70 years of property records. Franklin files our countersuit. Rodriguez calls with news. Cordelia's got more friends in county government than I'd guessed. March comes, and she drops any pretense of being civil. If she can't win in court, she'll just physically block our business and dare us to do something. That's how I found myself staring at a shiny new gate across our only access road. Sign reading, private property. Lakeside Estates residents only. Security guards are there to turn away every car. Cordelia's standing with her BMW, arms crossed, smile that says she's already got the victory speech written. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood. I hope you don't mind the traffic management improvement." I set my coffee down. Traffic management. She gives me this little head tilt. Our survey shows this road crosses Lakeside Estates property. We're simply protecting privacy. But see, she never bothered to actually survey anything. She just assumed new money trumps old paperwork. I call Franklin, and he doesn't just pull our records. He commissions a professional survey, top of the line. Turns out, not only is the access road on my land, but their main road crosses a 50-foot easement my granddad never transferred. If I wanted, I could block their residents from getting to their own houses. That's not even the bombshell. Maya's senior project research finds Cordelia isn't just an HOA queen. She's a front for a consortium buying rural land for fracking. Her real goal is to force me out so they can drill for natural gas. County records clerk, Betty, whispers to me, "That woman's been here 6 times asking about mineral rights around your property." There are gas company geologists all over the place. Suddenly, all her harassment makes sense. She needs my land for her operation, and she figured she could bully a widower into selling. But what Cordelia never figured, my family's 1952 deed includes mineral rights for 2 miles in every direction. Every McMansion, every inch of her beach club, every gas pocket she's mapped. It's all sitting on minerals that belong to me. So when she shows up at the gate with a sheriff's deputy and a locksmith, waving what she claims is a court order, I'm ready. "Sir, I need you to let them secure this access point," the deputy says, clearly uncomfortable. "Officer, that's not a court order," I say, reading the papers. "It's a request, hasn't been granted." Cordelia snaps. "Don't listen to him. This is our property." I pull out our surveyor's report. "Officer Williams, would you like to see 70 years of records?" He looks it over. "Mrs. Whitmore, this gentleman has documentation showing this road is on his property. I can't help you block access to someone's own land." She drives off, dust and pride hanging in the air. And I make a decision right there. I'm going to let her think she's winning, just long enough for her to dig her own grave. April comes. The woods are greening up. Franklin calls me into his office, and he's got that look like he found a gold nugget in the garden. "Ezra," he says, "sit down." He spreads out the original deed, the ink faded brown with age, and points to a clause buried deep in the legalese, including all mineral rights and appurtenances thereof within a radius of 2 miles from the described property boundaries. Franklin grins. "Son, your grandfather didn't just buy a campground. He bought the mineral rights under half the county, including every square inch of Lakeside Estates." My ears ring like I've been hit with a flashbang. Cordelia's whole empire, all her partners, all that money, built on land where the minerals belong to my family. But it gets better. Maya's digging into Cordelia's companies, and it turns out Whitmore Pharmaceutical Holdings is just a shell for Appalachian Energy Consortium. This group snapping up rural land for mineral rights. Their whole game? Buy cheap, force people out, flip the rights for millions. Cordelia's already poured millions into surveys and drilling permits. Her partners committed another $15 million, betting they'd get mineral rights access within 6 months. But every bit of that sits under the Blackwood deed. Her timeline is dead in the water, and she has no idea. That night, I walked down to Sarah's grave, watched the sunset, and talked to the headstone. "Honey," I say. Turns out the old man was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. Time to put that nuclear option to work. Ever had the feeling you're playing poker with someone who thinks they're holding all the aces? Meanwhile, you're sitting there with a royal flush you haven't even looked at yet? That's where I was, late April. Cordelia still thinks she's fighting some redneck campground owner over campfire smoke and property lines. I'm sitting on paperwork that could wipe her entire operation off the map. Time to build my team. First up, Maya and her environmental club. These kids have been out here all spring, collecting water samples, documenting runoff, counting frogs, thinking they're doing homework, not laying the foundation for the most bulletproof environmental impact report this county's ever seen. Maya runs them like a little army. Dad, she says, sliding charts across the table, we've got proof they dumped filled dirt in protected marshland. Violated EPA wetland regs. Here are the photos. Here are the water tests. Here's the habitat destruction. Next, my old friends from the campground crowd, mostly vets, a couple of retired cops. Rodriguez, the ex-Marine who quit working security for Cordelia, now sits at my kitchen table helping connect dots. I've got photos of Cordelia meeting with county officials, he says. And I've got recordings. She's not just bribing Hayes. She's paying for permit rushes, for inspectors to look the other way. Franklin Morse, our lawyer, barely sleeps. The guy's in his 80s, and suddenly it's like he's 20 again. Ezra, he says, I've been waiting my whole career for a case like this. David and Goliath, except this time David's got a nuclear arsenal. We rope in Charlie Henderson, a retired IRS investigator who's been bringing his grandkids to Pine Ridge since forever. Charlie starts untangling Cordelia's web of shell companies, money flowing through offshore accounts, tax fraud, the whole 9 yards. Maya expands her club's research out to the full 2-mile radius covered by our mineral rights. They map contamination, track illegal dumping, build a picture of lakeside estates as an ecological train wreck. Franklin files challenges to every mineral rights transfer Cordelia's consortium ever tried, demanding proof they actually own what they think they own. We wire up the campground like Fort Knox, cameras, motion sensors, you name it. If Cordelia wants to try intimidation, she'll end up starring in her own highlight reel. Here's a tip for you if you ever face off with corporate bullies. Since 2021, shell companies have to disclose beneficial ownership. You can't hide behind layers of LLCs the way you used to. Follow the money. The truth's usually buried right under a pile of bad paperwork. But here's where the magic really starts: community organizing. I hold a Safe Pine Ridge meeting at the center. The place is packed, standing room only. Local environmental groups, the tourism board, even people from the historical society. I get up and tell them, this isn't just about my campground. This is about whether we control our own future, or whether some outsider gets to strip mine our heritage. Word gets out. Maya's data goes viral. People from across the state start sharing it. Save Pine Ridge starts trending. Legislators take notice. Local media dig in. We time everything for peak tourist season, when the town's full and no one can look away. Late nights at Franklin's office start to feel like war planning. We're running on coffee and adrenaline, surrounded by property deeds, environmental studies, and a growing stack of evidence. Franklin grins and says, we're not just fighting for you. We're setting a precedent. Time to show Cordelia what happens when she picks on the wrong neighbor. May heats up, and so does Cordelia. Her consortium starts to panic. When big money feels the walls closing in, it doesn't get more reasonable. It gets desperate. First, the sabotage. Our main water pump develops mysterious electrical problems. $2,500 repair. Then our access road gets chewed up by construction equipment. Nobody knows how it happened, except my security cameras catch the whole thing. Anonymous complaints about safety violations start pouring into state agencies. Everyone requires hours and dollars to answer. But here's the fun part about modern surveillance. I've got video of everything. Employees from Cordelia's maintenance company, 3 a.m. cutting wires, dumping motor oil near our water intake to frame us for environmental violations. Rodriguez helps ID every guy in the footage. That's Tommy, he says, used to brag about making $50 for every headache he caused over here. I take it straight to the state attorney general's office. Turns out, Cordelia's not the first person in the region to use sabotage and harassment to drive people off their land. There's an open investigation. Now they have hard evidence on camera. And then Cordelia makes her worst move. She tries to buy me off. She shows up one bright Tuesday morning, wearing a smile so fake it should have come with a price tag. Her BMW glints in the sun. She's carrying a manila envelope thick enough to choke a horse. Mr. Blackwood, she says, sugary sweet, I think it's time we resolve our little misunderstanding like civilized adults. I just motion her over to the same old picnic table where all this started. Sure, Mrs. Whitmore. Let's hear it. She offers me $2 million for the campground, double what it's worth, cash, right now. She talks about job creation, community growth, how her partners will invest heavily, if only I'll cooperate. She's so confident I'm desperate that she doesn't even hide the threat. Sometimes problems can disappear if people are reasonable, sometimes they get worse if people aren't. What she doesn't know. I started recording the second she stepped out of her car. I play dumb. So just for clarity, what exactly do you need from me, Mrs. Whitmore? She lays it all out, including admitting her consortium is about to start drilling as soon as the last holdout signs. I nod, keep her talking, watch the color drain from her face when she realizes I'm not saying yes. After she leaves, I send the whole recording to Franklin and the Attorney General. Cordelia just confessed to bribery, conspiracy, and criminal intimidation, all on tape. In North Carolina, that's perfectly legal as long as you're part of the conversation. Charlie Henderson's been busy, too. He's traced her shell companies to fraudulent environmental filings, money laundering, even tax evasion. IRS, FBI, EPA. Everyone's interested now. Meanwhile, Maya bursts in one evening, grinning ear to ear. Dad, the State Environmental Agency just announced a criminal investigation into Lakeside Estates. Our data's front and center in the case file. I sit on the dock, watch the sun drop behind the trees, and realize Cordelia's given me everything I need to blow up her whole world. All I have to do is pick the right moment. June rolls in like the last round of a prize fight. Cordelia's crew looks rough. Legal bills stacking up, partners getting jumpy, state and federal investigations closing in. But they've got one move left, political pressure from the top. Suddenly the governor's office is very concerned about environmental violations at my campground. Yeah, the irony's thick enough to spread on toast. The State Environmental Agency schedules a surprise inspection, with a press release big enough to make you think they're investigating a nuclear spill. The inspector they send, Davidson, is tied up with 3 different extraction companies. Charlie digs that up in about 10 minutes flat. This isn't an inspection. It's a setup. What Cordelia doesn't count on is that I've been getting ready for this day since the minute I learned her game. Maya's club turns the campground into an environmental showcase. Testing stations everywhere, wildlife habitats restored, water so clean you can see your reflection in it. Every standard met or exceeded, every document ready. Davidson shows up, expecting to find violations he can use to shut me down. He steps out of his car, sees a crowd of state AG investigators and environmental activists, and instantly looks like a man who's lost his wallet. Maya's ready. Mr. Davidson, here's our full water quality data. Contamination, 0. But you want to look at these downstream samples from Lakeside Estates. She hands him a stack of reports and photos: illegal dumping, petroleum contamination, destroyed habitat. You can watch the blood drain from Davidson's face. And then I play my hand. Mr. Davidson, while you're here, let's talk mineral rights. I hand him the original deed and Franklin's legal brief. Seems like there's some confusion about who owns the subsurface rights. That's the moment Davidson knows he's finished. The AG's office pulls him aside. We'd like to ask you about your work with Appalachian Energy Consortium. Within 2 hours, that inspection turns into a crime scene investigation. Davidson's answering for bribes. His team starts finding all the real violations at Lakeside Estates. The local news shows up just as Cordelia arrives in a panic, trailing a herd of lawyers. She expected to see my campground shut down. Instead, state investigators are hauling out boxes of files from her development office. A reporter shouts, "Mrs. Whitmore, what about the bribery and environmental charges?" She loses it on camera. shrieking about witch hunts. The AG's office responds, calm as a summer breeze. Ma'am, we have evidence of payments to officials. Would you like to make a statement? That night, Maya and I sit on the dock, laptop open, watching it all blow up on the evening news. Nationwide coverage. Justice for Pine Ridge is trending. Dad, she says, tomorrow's county commission meeting is going to be legendary. And she's right. Because the next day, the whole state is watching. July 15th. The county commission meeting is standing room only, media, activists, even some folks from the FBI and the state AG's office. Cordelia strolls in 45 minutes late, still dressed like she thinks this is a minor hiccup. Her lawyers look like they're aging by the minute. Chairman Bradley calls it to order. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're reviewing development permits and compliance issues. Franklin stands up and hands me the original deed, just as Maya sets up her projector. Commissioners, my family's owned Pine Ridge for 72 years. We've protected this land. Today, I'm going to show you what real stewardship looks like. Maya flips through water quality charts, side-by-sides of our land and lakeside estates. You can hear the room react. Cordelia tries to jump in. These are fabricated attacks. But I just nod at the tech guy to play the audio. Her own voice fills the chamber. Sometimes problems can disappear if people are reasonable. Sometimes they get worse if people aren't. Silence, except for the sound of reporters texting the story. Agent Morrison from the FBI stands up. Mrs. Whitmore, we have questions about racketeering charges. Please remain in the chamber. But it gets even better. Commissioners, one more thing, I say. Franklin steps forward, holding up the old deed. Ladies and gentlemen, the Blackwood family owns all mineral rights within a 2-mile radius, including lakeside estates. The crowd erupts. Cordelia's lawyer tries to protest. We need time to review. But I cut him off. You've had 70 years. Your client built her whole empire on minerals that never belonged to her. The AG's rep stands up. Mrs. Whitmore, you are under arrest for conspiracy, bribery, environmental crimes, and racketeering. The sound of handcuffs is the sweetest music I've ever heard. Outside, Maya hugs me hard as cameras capture the moment. Dad, Mom would be proud. I think she's right. Sarah always believed that sometimes the quiet ones get the last word. August brings the kind of justice that's both cold and sweet, like the best glass of iced tea. Cordelia pleads guilty, takes a deal. 18 months in minimum security and $2.8 million in fines. Her whole consortium collapses overnight. Their investors lose $20 million in a scheme that never stood a chance, not since 1952. Davidson gets 3 years for bribery. Hayes resigns in disgrace. Turns out, when you shine a bright enough light, all the cockroaches start running. Here's the best part. We use the mineral rights revenue to transform Pine Ridge. We build an environmental education center in Sarah's memory, with Maya's lab as the centerpiece. The campground becomes a model for sustainable tourism. Maya gets a full ride to Duke for environmental law, her project the cornerstone of her scholarship. Franklin finally retires, a local legend. The Pine Ridge Environmental Foundation now funds restoration projects, scholarships, community events, enough to keep the place alive for Maya's grandkids. Even the new HOA leaders come by, hat in hand, asking how they can help fix the mess Cordelia left behind. Suddenly, we've got community gardens, conservation teams, old enemies working side by side to keep the lake clean. Our case sets a precedent. State law changes. Now every mineral rights transfer has to be disclosed. The feds use our story as a blueprint for prosecuting land grab schemes. If you've stuck with me this far, here's the last nugget I'll give you. Never underestimate what's buried in old paperwork. Sometimes the most valuable thing you own is the one thing the big guys never bother to look for. These days, I start every morning on the dock with my coffee. Maya's students wade out into the lake, laughing, collecting samples. The air's cleaner. The fish are back. Families drive here from 5 states just to camp, just to see what happens when you fight for what's yours and you don't back down. 6 months after Cordelia went away, a busload of kids arrives for summer camp. One little girl asks Maya why the water's so clear. Maya just grins. Sometimes, when people try to take something beautiful away from you, you discover you're stronger than you knew. That's what Sarah would have said. So here's my challenge for you. If you're dealing with your own Cordelia, don't quit. Document everything. Find your allies. Sometimes the quiet neighbor's the one holding the deed that brings the whole scheme down.